"You're such a nice guy." Those are probably the 5 worst words any man can hear from a woman they're interested in. Because being labeled as a nice guy for men either means that they're not seen as a romantic prospect with women and that they're only seen as a friend, or they're seen as one of those guys who is using manipulative tactics just to be with women. And while those things sometimes may be true, I don't think people really try to understand why a lot of guys struggle in the dating market and why they end up as a nice guy, and it's not always for sinister reasons. So today I wanted to react to a great video on this subject by Akana called "Signs You're Dating a Nice Guy."
Now, there's been endless amounts of dissections of nice guy syndrome, predominantly when they secretly hope that their niceness will be rewarded with sex, affection, and attention, and how they think of friendships with women as a transactional occurrence.
Thank you so much for being there for me throughout my tumultuous breakup with the department. I'm just so glad I finally left.
Well, there's your first problem. You're friends with a dude with a 70s porn stash.
And I will just go ahead and give you this.
What's this?
Oh, this is an itemized invoice for the hours of
Look at that thing. It's just like a fucking piece of Velcro.
Oh, whoops, that's a mistake. Your total due is a relationship and sex. If you need to split up the payments for any reason, I'll go ahead and take a 45-minute cuddle session up front.
I'm not gonna be in a relationship with you. We're friends.
I have worked at this friendship for 3 years. I've given you my company with blood, sweat, and tears. Hours and hours and hours of overtime. And for what?
My friendship!
Nothing. Your friendship is worthless to me.
To be honest, that's quite a bit more tame than many of the outbursts I've seen from men over the years, but this is the essence of nice guy syndrome. They will pretend to be friends with a woman that they don't actually want to be friends with. I mean, they might want to be friends with, but first and foremost, they want to be romantic. So they act like a good friend, and they might do favors for somebody or help them out like a friend would, but there's always strings attached. And over time, if those romantic feelings aren't reciprocated, they'll become more and more frustrated until they can't take it anymore, and often they'll lash out. It's why I tell men, you should only be friends with women if you want to be friends with them. If you want something more, you got to try for that first, and then if it doesn't happen, you can decide if you truly want a friendship.
But, surprise, surprise, nice guy behavior is not exclusive to men. It's a mindset peppered across the spectrum of gender.
There are plenty of nice girls.
And one that I think is pretty vilified. I mean, rightly so, it can be pretty shitty, right? But today, I would actually like to take a deeper and perhaps more compassionate look at not only the variety pack of collectible nice guys and the subtle behaviors they enact, but why, in essence, it's their core wounds telling them that they're not enough that's making them act real shitty.
And that's exactly right. Like, I'm not justifying a lot of this behavior, but it's not always just these dudes are trying to be evil and manipulative. It's that they have had so many experiences of rejection and failing that they're in so much pain and they just don't know what to do anymore.
So, the stereotypical and media-saturated nice guy often suffers from a flawed logic, that involuntary decency is their only character flaw. They think that merely because they're not horrible people who abuse their partners, numerous prospects should flock to them. They think by simply refraining from doing something terrible is this great sacrifice, when in reality that's like the bare minimum of human decency.
Attraction is an emotional response we feel. It's not just a logical choice. You don't just look at somebody and say, oh my god, I want to totally be attracted to them. And that's what a lot of nice guys miss. They believe that if they just have these virtues, that alone will make a woman say, this is the right person for me. And that might be true. She might say, wow, this is a great guy for me, but she just doesn't feel sexually attracted. And that often happens from flirting and showing your interest and not pretending to be a friend.
In short, they're entitled, calculated, and, you guessed it, manipulative. But I think this is the most sinister and extreme portrayal of a nice guy. Like, yes, they exist, but this is a one-dimensional explanation that leaves no room for understanding why the hell these people act this way. Now, the reason I want to take a look at nice guys through this lens is because one of my male friends is in an abusive marriage, and in really looking at the dynamics between him and his wife and talking this over with my therapist, I realized that he suffers from being a nice guy, but that this definition of like nice guy syndrome was foreign to me.
This is a really terrible situation I find a lot of nice guys end up in. They meet a woman who's looking for a more serious relationship and ready to start a family, or that woman has dated quite a bit and not found a great guy, so they find someone on paper who seems nice, and then they decide to settle with them. The problem is that those women aren't really attracted to that man, and so they feel resentful over time, or they feel unfulfilled, and they start to lash out themselves. See, this is the side of nice guys that many people don't talk about, which is that because they struggle with setting boundaries or enacting self-respect, they can often end up with somebody who is walking all over them or taking advantage of them, and they become the victims in that situation.
Because when I think of a nice guy, I don't think of someone who has trouble setting boundaries.
This is my private space. Your private space.
When I think of a nice guy, I don't think of someone who feels like he desperately has to control the way he's perceived in relationships.
Whoop bomb! I will be whoever you want me to be.
Changed it up to a Mario mustache or a Luigi mustache. Is it Luigi
and I definitely don't think
Waluigi?
of someone who unconsciously chooses volatile partners who treat them like doormats because they're willing to tolerate abuse for approval.
Hello, ladies. I worship the ground you walk on. Except I guess I am the ground you walk on.
That's
So I
some people's
worship being
fetish.
beneath your feet.
But do you also think of someone who grew up with an emotionally volatile parent who lacked boundaries? Of someone who doesn't think that they're enough? Of someone who cleans up the emotional messes of their abusive partner? So nice guys get a bad rap for feeling entitled to sex. But that entitlement comes from a belief that a romantic relationship is the only possible source of happiness in their lives. They interpret their own value through a lens of sexual desirability, which as a woman in living in society, I relate to, and they see friendship as failure.
There's two really important things I want to address here. There's a difference between being a nice person and being a nice guy. And this is what a lot of men overlook too. They think just being polite or kind or compassionate suddenly makes you weak. No, being unable to set boundaries and letting people walk all over you and never leading and always deferring to other people, that's what makes you a nice guy. But if you are a good guy who has all these compassionate, heartfelt qualities, but you can act with confidence, be assertive at times, and speak your mind, that's actually the best of both worlds, and that's a truly confident man. And the second point is that if you don't have a high level of self-esteem, then you're going to look for that from women and from validation from sex and feeling desired. And self-confidence never comes from that. It always has to come from within. And when you finally work on yourself, that's when you can start to take rejection not personally, and you can actually be friends with beautiful women without wanting anything more because you also appreciate that and are not using that to validate your own existence.
And when I look at nice guys through this new lens, and instead of feeling like angry and upset about them like I normally do, I actually feel really sad for them. Because nice guys, like myself, like the way I used to think, they think they have to earn love. That if they just do enough, and if they show up in these very specific ways, maybe they can gain love. Instead of intrinsically feeling like they're lovable because of who they are, they strive so hard to earn it. And yes, sometimes this motivation shows up in really disingenuous and shitty ways. But I would argue that nice guys finish last only when it comes to their own emotional needs, self-love, and beliefs about what they deserve. And may all you nice guys wander into a therapy office week after week, heal your core wounds, and then go back out into the world whole.
And there's the rub. You can't just have a few things on paper, like a nice car, and you're just a really thoughtful guy, and suddenly expect women to fall in love with you. You have to learn to love everything that you are and everything that you aren't, and be willing to express that, including your romantic interest. And that's where women can see your confidence, and they feel desired by you, and that's where you build real attraction.
And finally, a little food for thought. If you have a pattern of dating nice guys, why are you attracted to an imbalanced power dynamic? Are you going to be emotionally available for a partner who can set boundaries? And maybe, just maybe, are you identifying with someone's core wound of not being enough and trauma bonding like hell with them?
I like being a nice guy, and so should you. Just don't be a pushover, and don't use niceness as a tactic to gain affection. And whether you're a man or a woman watching this, the next time you encounter a nice guy, maybe you can have a little bit more compassion and try to understand where they're coming from.